Hey guys, this is going to be a part 2 of the Myths and Legends of the World story, which is Anansi in the box of stories. Let's get right into it.
Osibo the leopard. Anansi was terrified of this killing machine, with his powerful jaws and body that could easily crush a spider. So he had to be extra tricky and extra clever. Anansi knew that the fearsome Osibo walked the same route to the watering hole every night. So during the day, Anansi dug a deep pit in the ground along the well-trodden path and covered it with sticks and leaves. It was completely hidden from sight. When Osibo strode the water hole that night, he fell right in. "Help! I'm trapped! Somebody, please help me!" the leopard begged as hopelessly flailed and lunged out about the pit. Anansi could see and hear Osibo's long tail whipping through the air, and he approached the hole with great care. "I can help you, Osibo," Anansi called as he threw long silken threads of web down to him. "Wrap these around yourself like ropes, and I will pull you out." Osibo was so thirsty, he would have done anything to get out the pit. So, he wrapped himself in Anansi's sticky web. Osibo soon realized he'd been tricked, because with each twist of the web, the leopard became more entangled and more afraid. He strained his muscular body within the spider's silk wrapping. When Anansi pulled Osibo out, the great creature could hardly move. The spider bound him even tighter. "You're mine now," Anansi celebrated. And the spider took Osibo the leopard with spear-sharp teeth up to Naomi in the sky. Naomi was shocked when he spotted Anansi hauling Osibo throughout the air. "I cannot believe it," thought Naomi as Anansi delivered the mighty leopard. Well, 2 out of 4. Surely Anansi would run out of his clever tricks. Third, Mombora the hornet. Now, carrying a calabash, a hollow-out gourd filled with water, Anansi went to the forest where Mombora the hornet lived. Fearful of this creature's red-hot sting, he devised a plan to capture him. Anansi climbed a branch just above the hornet's nest and poured some of the water onto a banana leaf above his own head. Then, he poured some water on the hornet's nest and shouted to Mombora, "It's raining very hard!" The hornet peered out of his nest, droning loudly. Anansi could not tell what the sound meant. Was Mombora curious or annoyed? Was he alerting the scores of his fellow hornets, waiting to mobilize them with a single buzz? "Your nest is getting wet," Anansi added. "Quick! Fly to my calabash. It will keep you dry." Mombora, seeing all the dripping water, quick as a flash toward the calabash, but the sight of Mombora's stinger sent shocks through Anansi. The spider flinched, causing the hornet to miss the gourd and bump his head onto the rim. Mombora staggered backward and Anansi gasped. "Oh no!" he thought. "I've missed my chance." "What is this trick?" Mombora buzzed angrily. "Let me in!" Anansi tilted the calabash's opening toward the hornet and prayed he'd make it inside this time. Mombora landed at the bottom of the calabash. Success! Anansi quickly covered the opening with the banana leaf and wrapped his sticky web around the whole thing. Mombora was trapped, and he was furious. Anansi heard him sounding a pattern of buzzes. Long, short, short, long, long, short, short, long. He was alerting the others in his nest. With no time to celebrate, Anansi glided away quickly on the breeze and up, up, up toward Naomi in the sky. Mombora was safely in tow, and the rest of the swarm was far behind. Naomi saw Anansi gliding along the breeze with the wrapped calabash held firmly in his 8 legs. "Here," Anansi said, out of breath, dropping the calabash at Naomi's feet. "Inside this calabash is Mombora the hornet, whose sting feels like red-hot needles." Anansi glided off to capture the last 4, leaving Naomi slack-jawed at his own doorstep. At this point, the sky god thought to hide his box of stories. But a promise was a promise, and there was still one more chance for Anansi to follow up. And lastly, Aisha the invisible fairy. Anansi knew that catching the invisible fairy would be the hardest task of all, and one of the most dangerous. When she got angry and was and was often. She could kill any living thing with just a touch of her finger. She could throw lightning from her eyes and set the whole forest on fire. Her screech could cause small creatures like Anansi to disintegrate at once. For those who don't know what disintegrate means, it means like be destroyed into pieces. And Anansi couldn't even see her, so how could he capture her? Now he had to make her or her terrible temper visible somehow. So the clever trickster created a little doll out of twigs and leaves and sticky pieces of fluff and smeared sticky sap all over it. The doll was exactly the same size of Moesha in the invisible fairy and looked sweet and friendly. He brought the doll to the thicket where the fairies were known to play, placed it against a tree, and set a bowl of delicious yams in front of it. Then Anansi scurried onto a low branch nearby to wait. And sure enough, Moesha, the invisible fairy, eventually arrived that evening when the moon was high in the sky. She ate the delicious yams in a satisfied sigh, thanking the doll. But when the doll said nothing in return, Moesha's temper began to bubble and boil. "You're incredibly rude," she shouted at the doll, then slapped it with both hands. Nothing happened to the doll, of course, but Moesha's fingers stuck to the sticky sap. "Let me go, or I'll kick you," the fairy shouted. Struggling with the doll, Moesha kicked with both her invisible feet, and they got stuck too. While Anansi couldn't see the fairy, he could see the doll being tossed everywhere from the safety of his low branch. He giggled at his cleverness, thinking of the book of stories that was soon to be his. But Anansi knew he had to act quickly as Moesha's temper was growing. The fairy thrashed about on the ground, trying to unstick herself from the doll. But with each punch and jerk of her body, Moesha became more trapped. Anansi had to be very careful not to get crushed, so he waited for a lull in the action. Then he swiftly picked up the doll and the invisible fairy and wrapped his web many times around them both. Moesha tried to lash out and unleash a bolt of lightning from her eyes, which hit a tree and set it on fire. Soon the whole fairy thicket was crackling in flames. Anansi scurried left and right, holding onto the doll and the fairy while dodging the burning branches falling down from the trees. The heat was near unbearable for the little spider, and Moesha's cackle sounded in his ears, making him stagger. Anansi managed to throw a silken thread in the direction of the upward wind. The silk caught the strong breeze and floated the spider, the doll, and the temptress fairy up and away. "You're mine now," Anansi celebrated as they cleared the burning forest. And the spider brought Moesha, the invisible fairy, with the most terrible temper, up to Naomi in the sky. Anansi had done it! He had captured Onini the python, Osable the leopard, Mombora the hornet, and Moesha, the invisible fairy. All for Naomi, the sky god. The wooden box of stories would soon be his to deliver to the people. When Anansi arrived at the doorstep with the fourth and final creature, Naomi was defeated, but impressed. The sky god bowed his head for the very first time. Anansi bowed back, grateful for the challenge and the glory in his success. "Little clever spider," Naomi said to Anansi, "you have done what many great kings and warriors have not been able to. As promised, and with many blessings, I grant you my wooden box of stories." As Anansi released the stories, the world began to take on a more vibrant color, which intensified the more the stories were told and retold. The wind laughed, and the animals cheered, and the people listened to the stories and loved them. The stories entertained, delighted, and deepened their lives, just as Anansi had hoped. The people told stories to their children, and their children told the stories to the children, and so on, passing them down for generations. And this is how you are able to hear the tales of Anansi and the Box of Stories even today. If you really enjoyed this story, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel in order to see more stories like this. Thank you and have a great day.